We knew that we were deploying to Afghanistan, and we had received special orders and waivers and paperwork to literally hitchhike our way as close into Afghanistan as possible. And so we got on this big C-17, we loaded a pallet, and they came in, they took us in, they landed on this thing. The aircraft never stopped moving. So it came in, they pushed off our equipment, they said jump off the back, and we weren't going very fast, but we all jumped off, rolled down the runway, and then this thing just fired up, jetted up, and left. So a couple days later, this place is just swarming with soldiers, and they're building camps and everything else, and we get our mission. And they literally said, we need you to go in and liberate the city of Mazar-i-Sharif. We don't expect you guys to all come back. In fact, the way this is aligned, we're not even certain that you're even going to make it to Mazar-i-Sharif, because winter's coming in, you're severely outnumbered. So we went back to our little tent, and we looked at each other and we were like, this is perfect for us, brothers. You know, this was made for us. The Uzbeks were ethnic Uzbeks who were living in Afghanistan, Tajiks, Hazars, and Pashtuns. These were enemy tribes of each other who, when the Taliban came in and took over the country, they were united for the first time in thousands of years. They fought against the Taliban. They were actually prevailing and doing well, and then Massoud was assassinated, and that is when Dostum, our friendly warlord, stepped in and said, let's continue this fight. So when we linked up with these guys, we immediately, Dostum came in, you saw how these guys rode in on horses. We were very surprised that they weren't trucks or four-wheelers. And Dostum said, you, and you, get off of your horse. Get on their horses, we're going. My horse I named Ado, which in Farsi or Pashtun or something means enemy. Because this thing did not like me and I did not like him. They literally, everyone rides a stallion. And so they're full-grown, unbroken stallions. They have classy saddles. So I had the pelvic bone of a young cow as a saddle strapped to this thing, and it had the luxury edition had a carpet on top, which is what I had. And Dostum, very cool cat, had a very good horse. His horse backed up. It's like, man, if I was a warlord, that would be one thing. My horse would definitely back up. But then he had his own kind of royal guard, the recon guys. And the recon guys were like pure, true Afghan warriors and horsemen. And so they led us through all this terrain, and we're on a ridge that's about, maybe 4 or 6 feet wide. These things were, mountains. And all of a sudden, my horse just turns perpendicular to the ridge. Well, like a jungle cat, this horse launches off the side of this cliff. And I mean, we're flying. And I don't know if anybody has ever seen, but I had one thing that I literally believe this saved my life, and I went into the man from Snowy River mode. So in this movie, my childhood hero jumps this horse off a cliff, and he threw his feet up, way up by the horse's ears, and then laid back on this horse's haunches, like tail right here by your head. And so I literally was like, man from Snowy River. And I assumed the position, and we go cruising down this hill at full speed. And it takes a little while, and then I'm thinking, we are going to make it. We are going to make it. I'm changing your name as soon as we get to the bottom. We get down there, and right before we get to the bottom, I look, and there's a wadi. A wadi is like a huge wash. It's a ditch of erosion. So I think we make it all the way down, and then I'm gonna get piled up under enemy at the bottom of this thing. But he pulled it off again and jumps this thing, and we're on flat ground. I mean, I'm alive now. Then about 25 minutes later, the recon guys show up, and it was like a totally different atmosphere. And I'm thinking, I know, you put me on this thing. But it was more like I got like a little nods of affirmation, like, dude, did you see Man from Snowy River? No, I did. So they go by, Dostum comes by, and he goes by, and then I told you, he had that awesome horse, and then he walked it back. And I was like, oh man, I thought I was gonna get away. And he said something to me, and then the translator then came up behind him and said, hey, that was an awesome compliment he just paid you. And I'm thinking the whole time, these guys are like, send that kid home. He should have never been put on the horse in the first place. And he said, Dostum said, truly, you were the finest horseman in all Afghanistan. They thought I did it on purpose, like, come on, let's get these guys. So we quickly ascertained that the way to fight these guys is we would go and attack them in a village. All these villages were on a long valley along this Darya Suf River. So we would hit them, they would put up a huge front, a real good fight, and then as we started to close in to destroy this enemy position, they would break, they would run, hit another town farther north towards Mazar and refortify, and then we would move forward slowly. They would be completely prepared for us, and then it was just a grueling battle, one after another. We pushed all the way into Mazar-i-Sharif, which in itself was kind of surreal, because we initially came in and it was sort of this weird triumphant procession. The Taliban had pressed all the way into the heart of the city, and the people were out rejoicing. So it was sort of this ticker-tape parade, but there were still some sympathetic people to the Taliban, and supposedly the number was 900 of the hardline guys moved into this place as their final hold. So we had a bunch of elders, tribal elders, and we tried to negotiate a surrender with these guys, and they said, we will die here, but we are not surrendering. We called in a bomber. The plane comes over. He's running out of gas. He can't make it back to his checkpoint. He says bombs away, and then he says, my bomb is stuck. It won't fall off of the wing. So we say, you've got to be kidding me. So he says, I'm going to make one last trip. I'm going to come around and I'll just shake my aircraft. And we think, all right, it's $1 billion aircraft and he's just going to flap his wings. But it worked. And all the math, which again, I don't know what kind of math you use for that, this thing comes down and goes straight smack dab in the middle of this building. And that whole building just kind of did a squat. It just opened up a little bit, but didn't collapse, didn't fall. And now we're thinking that these guys have got to surrender, and they simply refuse. So about that time, the second aircraft is coming in. He drops 2 bombs in it and basically flattens this thing. Victory, yes, but sad at the same time, because that's a lot of human souls right in front of you. So then we stop, and it's like a dead stop, and the combat hat comes off, and then you put this nation builder hat on, and we built a pseudo-government that took over a temporary government to establish order. We rebuilt hospitals, airfields, fertilizer factories, we made a police force, and we did this in record time. So we had 12 months to liberate Mazar-i-Sharif. We did it in 6 weeks and 0 US casualties, at least on our team. I just want to close with one interesting little story, is that the Afghans, in their purest sense of handing down history, they have the oral tradition. We found out about 10 or 15 years later that the oral tradition that's passed down about these Green Berets is that 12 angels of light descended from heaven to liberate us from our oppressors. And our Special Forces motto is De Oppresso Liber, which is to liberate the oppressed.